Hey, what's up? So last night I woke up at 4 AM to take a piss, and after that I just couldn't sleep. My head was filled with all kinds of thoughts and ideas, and the very title of this video was one of those. Why are old games so much more appealing to me? Why is it that I'm finding less and less interest in modern games? It's something that I every now and then find myself contemplating on, but after last night, I think it's time to get my thoughts outside. So greetings dear viewer, I am Hypo. I make long-form retrospective styled content about old games that are usually from the 90s or from the early 2000s. As a preface, I think it's important to establish the idea that I was born in the 90s, so now you know from which era of gaming I come from. The first games I ever got to play were my cousin's Super Mario Bros. Plus Duck Hunt NES Kart and Duke Nukem 3D alongside Redneck Rampage. I was so excited by the Mario Brothers that I literally pissed myself, and that's a true story, and I was like maybe 2 years old. Sadly, I was very rarely able to play those games, and that may have been a good thing for my parents, considering the latter two games I mentioned. Later in 1997, my mom would buy the very first console for our household, the OG PlayStation, which I still have to this day, and it even works. Ain't it beautiful? I cannot recall all the games my mom bought me back then, but there were like only 3 of them. One game that I remember was the first Rayman, so basically I grew up playing a pretty difficult piece of gaming history. Aside from that, there were mostly only demo discs, which were a thing back then. So why do I prefer old games over modern ones? Well, the most obvious surface level reason would be reminiscing of the old. As we all know, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and that cannot be denied. It's the main reason why people are creating these retro gaming corners for themselves, all the way from classic gaming consoles to CRT TVs. I've seen so many cool ones, and seeing them always makes my mouth drop in awe. It's common to seek comfort in things we loved as wee lads, and certain PS1 games still do that for me as well. However, I do feel like nostalgia isn't everything. Personally, this feeling comes from my newfound interest in RPGs, especially CRPGs that I found out about in my 20s. I've always been very into MMORPGs, so it might stem up from there. I personally believe vanilla World of Warcraft is one of the best games ever made, and that is due to the sheer love and passion Blizzard put into it over 20 years ago. I kinda feel like that the crucial keyword is passion. With the old games you can really feel the passion that was put into the game, no matter how good or bad it was. Sadly, in modern gaming it feels like the passion is heavily snuffed. The optimist inside me wants to believe that some of the developers are still passionate about what they are doing, but it is exhausted by the owners, or the suits, or the corpos, or the head honchos, who are clueless what is a good video game. Most likely they don't even care, and it's understandable, because they are businessmen and their thing is how to make money and not how to make video games. To be completely honest, it's no wonder that businessmen are interested in the video game industry. Back in the day, gaming was for sweaty nerds, outcasts of the community, so the numbers were considerably smaller. Nowadays, gaming is the most popular hobby in the whole world, and it's very likely that even your bullies in the elementary school who made fun of your nerdy hobby are nowadays playing video games themselves. This attracts businessmen to purchase companies, and eventually they set profit-oriented demands to the passionate developers, ruining your favorite franchises. So how does a video game become more profitable? By targeting larger audiences. The basic logic is that the more people purchase it, the more money it makes. World of Warcraft is an excellent example here. Long gone are the days of war between the Alliance and Horde, and nowadays Azeroth is about whimsical Disney adventures filled with microtransactions, where you, the player, are hailed as a mighty hero straight after your character creation. These changes are made to appeal to broader audiences. There is a wonderful video made by Angelikatosh discussing the Disneyfication of WoW, and I wholeheartedly recommend you to check it out if you haven't already. The link is in the description. To conclude the WoW talk, it's just absurd to hear the lead creative figures of the game state that they wish the game was not called World of Warcraft, because of the word war. Now that's a way too scary word for the current generation of gamers. Funnily enough, all this alienates and even exiles the previous, unbelievably loyal fanbase for whom the game was made in the first place. It can also create a well-discussed paradox, whereby trying to appeal to everyone, you appeal to none. This can have disastrous consequences. I wouldn't wonder if that was the last Dragon Age we are going to see. Regarding Dragon Age, my hot take is that this series was already dead after Origins, so Inquisition fans, no hard feelings. Of course, video games have always been sold products, so the business side has always been there, but the size of the industry was nowhere near back then compared to what it is today. I guess the main problem is that some companies have simply grown too big, and usually they are commonly known as the great evils of the industry. The Western way of life is to reach the grandest goal as fast as possible, and in my opinion, that can be seen in modern gaming. Instant gratification, no punishment in failure, hand-holding to the max, instant feel of power. Nowadays, the first hour in the video game is the most crucial one, and that is usually the time window when a new player decides if the game is good or not. Therefore, it's important to have the player reach big goals as fast and effectively as possible. So give me everything right now or I will flame your game on Reddit. To me, old games have always felt more journey-oriented. The goals are there, but the main focus is in the journey you're taking. It was all about finding out things yourself, learning through failure, and then improving yourself. In my opinion, that can be mirrored to real life outside video games as well. Life is a long journey, not a race to the goal. Now, this is a very opinionated take, but video games are beginning to look too realistic nowadays, leaving less and less room for imagination. To me, there was something magical in the old fuzzy graphics, where your imagination was the connecting element between you and the game. In addition, all the details were much more impressive back then. As an example, let's take a look at the final boss room of the first Baldur's Gate, so sorry for the spoilers beforehand. The Temple of Baal is simple yet detailed. The crimson floor representing the Lord of Murder is decorated by the symbol of Baal itself, making this place very recognizable alongside the gloomy statues wielding scythes. The altar up ahead is very detailed. However, the low resolution makes everything a bit unclear, so you need to use your imagination to fill the blanks. For example, the pillars on both sides look like piles of skulls, and the rug on the altar is an equation of many things. To me, it looks like there is a cauldron full of people boiling on a fire accompanied by a laughing face, which would thematically serve the Lord of Murder well. Everyone sees things differently, and your imagination might say something completely different, and that is the magic. So how about the evil ball spawn himself, Sarevok? A towering man clad in armor with a big sword. Is he even a human in his spiked appearance, or can he be considered a beast? Let your imagination fill the rest, as the Deathbringer himself is coming for your head. So I'd say there lies beauty in ugliness. That ugliness also plays a role in the game's atmosphere. If you've been misfortunate enough to see any of my previous videos, you've probably heard the word atmosphere maybe a couple of times before. Nowadays, game worlds are empty, bland, and devoid of atmosphere, which makes me sad. Immersion is an unfortunate rarity, and I really miss the worlds of Morrowind and Oblivion. Everyone keeps always memeing about Todd, 16 times the detail Howard, but the man has made unbelievably immersive worlds, and sometimes I think people forget it. Regarding previously mentioned classics from the 90s, games used to be very innocent. Nowadays you need to be very careful with the in-game content so you don't piss off or offend people, which sometimes makes games take a political stance, and I feel like games should stay away from politics. With the enforcement of diversity, equity and inclusion to video games, it's hard to stay apolitical. I know that the bottom intentions are good, but enforcing them is another thing. Also, why the fuck is everything censored nowadays? Is nudity really so intimidating that we even need to adjust historically correct things? The hyper-massive shitstorm of the Ultimate Brown is going to be absolutely massive when the God of War trilogy gets censored. I truly wish things would stay how they were, but the pessimist inside me is screaming aloud. I think we as human beings should go back in time a decade or two, where normal discussions and argumentations were a thing. We should be able to discuss these things civilly without resulting in spewing emotional nonsense as a mob. I really dislike the internet age mob mentality, and it's very dangerous to be terminally online. In the medieval times, the mob had to be there in person, which was potentially life-ending if the king wasn't taking it well. You could literally lose your head. Nowadays it's just warriors behind keyboards. However, we do need to remember that times change. Even if we wouldn't want to, some things will inevitably be left to the past. It's highly unlikely that we will ever see a new Duke Nukem game in the spirit of the 90s. The character was a very vulgar, egotistic, and sarcastic hero inspired by classic action movies, which nowadays would be like a everlasting burning cinders of hell that cannot be unleashed to the modern media because someone will get offended. Personally, I'd really love Duke to be back. However, another thing is that the IP is held hostage by the president of Gearbox Entertainment, Randy Pitchford, but that's another can of worms. Games used to be just games, and that's what I'm missing. The conversation regarding old versus new is endless, and everything is a matter of opinion. Ultimately, I personally think that it's awesome that everyone can enjoy a game they like. However, the modern industry is making very bold and concerning advancements in major things, which might lead to a dystopia where we will not be enjoying video games like we used to. At least in the so-called olden times, a purchased copy of a video game will always play on your chosen platform, and that might be another reason why people pursue those aforementioned retro gaming corners. In the end, it's in our hands as consumers to decide what we are supporting. I want to end things positively, so I want to emphasize that there are some unbelievably good modern games, even though I glorify the old ones. To throw in some examples: The Witcher 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Divinity Original Sin 2, Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, System Shock Remake, Prey 2017, Doom Eternal, and the list goes on. So as you can see, all is not lost. There's always light in the darkness. This was a bit of an oddball video compared to my other content, but I'm a bit of a thinker myself, so that's why this came to be. And I have to admit that this kind of a more personal, relaxed freeform video was definitely something I needed, and I hope I was able to make my thoughts concise, because they are the reason why my channel is like it is. I probably forgot some thoughts from the last night, but life goes on. Nevertheless, with old games, I am right where I need to be. Home. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think about all the things, and I'm very open to a good conversation in which we all might learn new perspectives. Next time it's going to be a normal video, so I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for watching and take care of yourselves.